Alright, so I'm going to be continuing today with adding some more enemies, and I'm also going to be altering my spawn point system so that I can determine which types of enemies are going to be spawned at each spawn point. As well as, I'm going to try and mix in some level design stuff as well. Like, I prefer building the game systems over building the actual game, and this is kind of a bad habit I've gotten into where once I'm like done with that part of the work, now I've got all the work I don't like to do at the end of it, which is, you know, essentially like just making the actual game. So I need to start doing these in tandem, you know, kind of set aside a little bit of time for one and the other. So I figure while I'm playing around with the spawn points, this is kind of a good opportunity to flesh out the rest of this outdoor introduction area before actually getting into the core levels of the game. Because really, this outdoor section is just going to be an introduction to the gameplay, to the combat system, before we get actually into the quote unquote ruins. So first off, last time I added this monster bee enemy, and I got this set up so I have my bee flying around. Unity finishes loading here. Every time I first run the game, it's always a little slow. I guess there's some caching going on in the editor. So, I mean, first off, these bees are pretty low to the ground. Like, I think if I pause and actually take a look here, yeah, we're going to find they're at position 0 on the y-axis. Position 0.2, actually, that's interesting. I wonder what the reason for that discrepancy is. But for the moment, I'm probably going to want to end up something with a... Actually, do I have any of them in view in the editor camera? Of course I don't. So let's just take this guy and let's plop him up to a 1. Be a 1.2. Did he immediately go back to, yeah, he immediately went back to his position. That must be the, you know what? That must be like the nav mesh or something is determining that. Let's take a little bit of a look here. Yeah, height is 0.5. Base offset is 0. Yeah, let's crank that up to 2. Oh yeah, that's definitely what it is. So I need a way to configure that aspect of the nav mesh agent based on the enemy information. And I probably want to be able to set the height as well, because that will that'll come into effect when it comes to overhanging regions. Can the enemy go under it, or do they have to go around? You know, so if I have like a if I have a broken tree, if you can imagine from like here to here, and the height in this region is 1, and the enemy has a height of 2, they wouldn't be able to pass underneath that broken tree. They would need to go around. However, one of those rabbit enemies I was showing off earlier, their height's much smaller, so they would probably be able to just go right under it. Though that's probably a little more attention to detail than is necessary. So for now, I'm just going to do the, I'll place hold the height, but I'm not going to worry about it too much until I have that kind of scenario. So let's see. So I got my models, or my prefabs of my models rather. Object pool manager. We got this guy here, and I'm going to, yeah. So I got my monster animation controller script. Enemy call that model information. Because it might not just be for enemies necessarily. It could be for anyone. Yeah, we'll leave that here in the enemy folder for now, but probably going to want to... Oh, do I have a folder for model scripts? No, I just got this animation section. Yeah, I'll create a script folder for models, just in case I have some other model-specific things. Oops, I didn't mean to create a new script. I meant to create a new folder. And yeah, the only thing at the root level is actor, because quite frankly, I just couldn't think of a spot to put that was appropriate. So enemy, model information, move that over to models. Reload our project. And we're going to default this to 1 for the height and 0 for the base offset. And I don't need to do any updates or anything. This is purely just for me setting information in the editor. Now, our monster bee prefab. It's going to get one of these model informations. Height 1, base offset will go 1.2. And where to deal with this at? So in my enemy spawner, or rather enemy spawn location, we spawn an enemy unit, and he does a get the location. He gets the game object from the prefab for the unit itself. Yeah, repository. We set the model here in this enemy spawner. This guy looks for the model placeholder game element underneath the enemy unit and parents the model to that location. I can't necessarily trust that this is going to be the route with the nav agent. So I do, however, know that this is the route. Well, I mean, do I know that this is always the route? I mean, it is, technically, everywhere I use it. So really, so the model information is found in the on the model object. Enemy root dot get component nav mesh agent. Now, this part is going to be true for the enemy unit, but it's going to be false for the enemy combatant. So in battle, the enemies that are spawned from the stationary battle manager class don't have any kind of navigation going on because they don't have movement during battle. So this part will not get hit. Agent.base offset is equal to model info.base offset. Aha. Stationary model information. Where'd you go? There you are. Expose those values publicly as a read-only. Now, very specific to height, I only want to set height if it's greater than 0. Because I think that will cause some weird issues with the nav agent if height is 0 or less than 0. At least as far as the collider goes. Okay, so in this case my height is 1, my base offset is 1.2. So we should now see the B be at the height that we're expecting. And yeah, they're much higher off the ground now. And if I get into a fight, they are still a little low. I think in that case, though, it's just a matter of the transform position. Right, so if I pop on over here to... I always lose my arena. Oh, well, it's in this separate project now, so now I can know exactly where it is. That's really helpful, actually. Yeah, so there's no nav mesh on this B or anything like that. It's not having gravity applied to it. So in my code, I'm checking to see if there's a nav mesh agent and setting it. The question is, do I want to just have something else then that looks and decides, well, if there's no nav mesh agent, I'm just going to set the Y position for the base offset. I think that's probably safe to do, and I think in that case, since there's no navigation going on, height is pretty irrelevant. And yeah, if I set this guy to 1.2, yeah. Let me take the controller here. Problem is the death animation's gonna he's not gonna fall all the way to the ground because the root motion is now set to an offset. So that's a bit of a problem, actually. I mean, I guess technically I have this derived animation controller for a reason. I could do in addition to playing the animation, I could do a delayed vector 3.lerp to the ground so that he falls the entire way. That's really annoying, though. Did it look bad, him being close to the ground like that? In battle? Like, what kind of distance are we actually... Yeah, that's super low to the ground. is way low. And quite frankly, I'm not confident in messing with this side of things too much. I did a lot of screwing around with animation events and things like that in the past, but changing the animation itself is more than I'm comfortable with. Especially given how like cleanly put together these models actually are. I'm very happy with these assets that I bought. From a organizational perspective, everything's nicely and neatly laid out and consistent. The creator's very meticulous with his packaging. But it does beg the question, how am I going to solve for that? This animation, he kind of sits here. Well, I had an idea. Let's just try it real quick and see what happens. I mean, what the hell does it hurt? Monster Bee animation. So I'm pretty sure I made that a abstract or a virtual death sequence. Yeah, play and wait until finish on this coroutine. And this is started from play die. So really that's what I want to override. Yeah, I want to play die. And I want an update call. And I want a private bool drop B is equal to false. If drop B and this dot not this dot transform, but I need the parent. Well, I've got reference to enemy dot transform dot position. So enemy will be the root node. Dot y is greater than 0. I'll just try that with a constant value, see how it turns out. Drop B. And then we also need to go ahead and do this. Oh. Of course, because it doesn't have it on the enemy unit. The enemy unit has an enemy unit object. Only the guys in battle have the enemy object. Oh boy. That was not at all what I wanted. If this dot drop B should be false, like this should not be getting hit. Yet it did, constantly, a lot. If enemy is not equal to null, oh. Yeah, this is hitting constantly. I feel like I don't need both of these booleans. Yeah, I don't need this. Right? Sort of. Not quite what I wanted. This position didn't get set. So if we have model information, it's true. If there is not a nav mesh agent, so my position was correct, and then it got changed afterwards. I bet I'm doing some extra stuff in here after I set the model. Well, sure, so we place the enemies afterwards, right? Now, what I could do is I could apply the offset to the model placeholder in my enemy. The problem, though, is going to be that the UI for the enemy that has their life and stamina bars is not going to be moved with it. And that'll potentially cause some overlapping issues. Now, what I could do is, instead of moving the whole enemy up, I could move the model placeholder up, and then I could have my canvas rooted to the, or parented rather, to the placeholder. So wherever I offset my model to is where the UI display goes to. Now, the problem with that, though, is that in my animation controller, I don't have a reference to that model placeholder. I could get one. I could do a GameObject.find. But it's either way, it's getting a little hacky. So what? So in our stationary battle manager, we set the model when we spawn the enemy. We're spawning our enemies based on our enemy units. And then we set the positions in battle. All right, we do this place enemies in the arena, which all this really does is looks to see how many enemies there are and chooses a one of my placeholder transform sets that has a child transform for each enemy that is in the battle. So I don't want to mess with those transforms. I guess at this point I can do a get component in children, and I could find if there is a model information component, and I could apply that transform change here instead of just applying this position set. Now, here's the question. So when I bring my enemy in initially, his transform is going to be 0, 0, 0, because that's kind of what my prefab is defined before I've parented it and done anything to it. The spawn, he does create enemy. He doesn't really do anything with the transform himself. He just game object instantiates the prefab and sets all this crap up. Right, all of his stats, his damage, his inventory based on the definition that we've created from the spawn location. But set model is setting his position to something. Now, if I assume the possibility that this transform is unaltered, then in my battle arena, I am safe to say, rather than enemy position is equal to t-dot position, I can say enemy position is equal to t-dot position plus enemy dot position, which should be either 0, 0, or it should be my offset by this point. Yeah, so my position, you can see down here in my console log, was 0, 1.20, and that's persisted over. So, feeling pretty good about that so far. Let's, there we go. Whoa, yeah, that exploded hard. So, this guy is still screwing my position. Why? Enemy transform position. We're going from the enemy transform position to the enemy transform position with a 0y coordinate. So it should just be down. So position is this. Where to get 25, 1.2, 20 from? And also it's incrementing the Y and the Z. Oh. Well, that would be one of those reasons. But even still... Oh no, I guess that's... Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually. That actually worked out really well. Damn, okay, that actually didn't look as janky as I thought it was going to. I really like it when things just come together nicely. You know, it's always a pleasant surprise. That's okay. I am, it looked like he might have been clipping through the ground a little bit. Is he actually ending its... Oh. The, on destroy, I need to reset those, I need to reset the boolean. Because when he got, repulled, it's attached to the model. So it's automatically going ahead and doing that. So, or not on pull, or on destroy, I need to do it on disable. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that'll fire when the game object's disabled, not just the component. Just going to kill a few of these and make sure we're good. So there's 4 over there. Well, there's a new one. I mean, we're seeing it pretty consistently there, but you know, you can't quite tell which enemy has been respawned and which one hasn't. So I'm going to go through a few battles and just make sure. It is kind of funny how the enemy stats are going down also. It looks really goofy. I'm going to need to remember to disable the canvas when the enemy's killed. Okay, well, I'm pretty satisfied with this. Like, I definitely would have hit one of the repulled enemies. So, now that that's good, yeah, and I'm okay with that speed. I don't really need to configure that or anything. So, yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at that canvas. So the canvas is part of the game object that's being instantiated. That's not part of the model. But let's see here. Enemy. Test combat enemy is the guy that I'm looking at. And he's got this canvas pivot that keeps the canvas always facing the player, regardless of the enemy's rotation and the rotation of the model. Attached enemy display is disabled. Enemy display controller. I have a reference to the enemy here, and on destroy we unhook the event. I mean, really, I took this off, but I really do want this actually, but I want to this.gameObject.setActive to false. And this part's not pulled, it's instantiated, so it's going to come back to being enabled after every kill. But I want to unhook. You always got to make sure you unhook your events, because this will cause the garbage collector to pin the instance, because it still has a reference from one of these objects to another, and it'll prevent the garbage collector from collecting that object even though it's been destroyed. So it's important to always remember to unhook those, unless you're hooking onto events that are in your same class. It's only when you're dealing with events between two objects that you want to remember that. So let's make sure that canvas goes away when we kill the enemy. Yep, sure did. Oh, that's funny. The guard prompt, that was very weird. I saw that in the corner over there. What, let me kill this enemy. He is disabled. But what happens to him? That was very weird. Is this enemy? Yeah, there it is. What, the hell's going on here? Oh, because I left my, wow, that scared me for a second. Because I left this guy in here when I was testing. That was a scary moment. It's like, oh God, what unrelated thing did that affect? Could imagine there was a scenario where the model was going over to the 000 coordinate after it was destroyed, but even though the game object was disabled, the AI controller was still operating. Like, that would be a very mysterious and strange error to have. So let's go ahead and kill these guys. And yeah, it looks like that's all keeping, and that's good and working fine. So I'm happy with that. And we are just about at 45 minutes, so I think I'm going to end this episode here. And next time I'm going to go back to dealing with, well, actually, as I set out to add some more enemy types and to mess with the spawn locations. So yeah, maybe next time here I'll mess with the spawn locations, and I'll set it up so that I can determine or define which enemies I'm going to spawn from the location itself, instead of having this it just randomly pull entries from my mock repository of enemy information. So thank you for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.